This is Slashers, your new favorite podcast for all your new favorite horror media. And as many times as you heard that before, we're here with a real good one for you today. You know, a very controversial one here, if you will. And I'm here with my esteemed colleague, co-host, and the creator of Slashers podcast, Jake.
Hello, Douglas. How are you today?
I can't complain, just a little bit of pit sweat here and there, but yeah, doing pretty good.
I'm cursed to only work in slightly uncomfortable conditions because, my home office is my illustrious garage, which can get over 100 degrees in the summer sun. And then I go to my actual office and it's 85 degrees where it's supposed to be air conditioned, but I am too cranky and cheap to pay for an air conditioner to come out for me. I just do it for my staff. That's great, right?
No, you're just being the boss that I'm sure people don't give credit for, but I hope you get some good lotion baskets as a Christmas gift or something from them.
One time I got Ninja Turtles 2 and 3 on DVD that were part of a box set where a lady kept number 1. That was probably one of the most thoughtful gifts I've gotten. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. My partner Gary got me a shirt that he had custom made for Slashers. Oh my God, 4 years ago. I'm so old.
Well, hey, beats mine. I got a half-eaten can of chili peppers before.
Oh, right. I remember that.
Yeah. So we can go on the stories about the wonderful gifts we've bestowed upon each other here, because we've got two things for you lined up today, and they are, and perhaps they're gifts bestowed upon us. But what would you say? Are you more excited about what we're going to talk about today? Or are you more like, run of the mill, typical?
So I'm actually a little worried. I'm going to be honest with you. I had talked to Sierra about this yesterday because we were originally going to record last night, but then my garage studio had like an infestation of crickets that were chirping. And, I love the podcast audience, but none of you are worth editing out that sound for because it is a very tedious process. So we moved it to today. And I'm glad that we did because it gave me time to kind of reflect and digest. I don't want to just be a naysayer about the Munsters. So I'd want to pitch to you how I would do a prequel or a sequel to the Munsters. Are you ready?
Shoot.
I wouldn't.
Well, not even with that 1996 the Munsters Christmas. What was that? The Munsters Christmas, or Have Yourself a Scare, like the ones that didn't even have Fred Gwynn in there.
Correct. Those ones actually are not the worst sequels or adaptations. There's Munsters Today. And that's, I think, why I really had a hard time with Rob Zombie's movie, is because it is much more in tone of Munsters Today. Have you ever watched that from the 80s?
I haven't seen that one. No. What, are you going by the color scheme of that one?
Not just the colors, but also the way that they're presented. Like Fred Gwynn is like, that's the hardest impersonation in the world, if you ask me. His voice is nasally, whimsically airy, deep baritone. I mean, there's so many things going on, and then you have the mannerisms on top of just the natural cadence of his voice. That's just an impossible task. I think the guy who did the TV movies that were like the reboots, those were actually quite good, in my estimation. Obviously not the same, his body type's different, but that's the best impersonation I've seen, by a pretty far margin. Definitely when you factor in the guy from Sliders. He was in Mockingbird Lane, right? Jerry McConnell.
Oh yeah, well, Jerry McConnell, yeah, he's yeah, I think he's been canceled now, I think.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know. I mean, just from all this is like, oh, you're just the typical womanizer and everything. He's like, that's just a character I play, I promise.
Oh, like Tomcats. How about Jake Busey's Nuts, huh?
Jake Busey gets around in the very dollar store, dollar bin budget friendly movies nowadays. So
Yeah, he's one of those guys who, when he's in stuff, I'm like, cool, but I would never go out of my way to see him.
no, I wouldn't either. It's like a car accident. You're really just going there. It's like, okay, I like you, Jake Busey, but what's your dad doing?
Yeah, exactly, right? Can we age up your role and give you this?
Oh yeah. Well, I guess going back into that here. So we got two movies for you. We got Rob Zombie's The Munsters, and we got Hocus Pocus Dos. So yeah. So how did you like Hocus Pocus 2? I guess that's just a preface for things to come, I guess.
So here's the thing. I feel like to a certain extent, Hocus Pocus was a deserved experience, right? Like, it was a movie that failed but had a cult following. And in terms of like Disney cult followings, it's pretty minimal that happens. You got like Emperor's New Groove, kinda, but you got movies like Black Cauldron and stuff, which just always stay in the background. They don't become cult classics and have this diehard, voracious fan base. And so like Hocus Pocus felt earned, it felt deserved. Whereas the Munsters, I think if this was the first time I'd seen new Munsters content, I might be more forgiving. But because I've seen Here Come the Munsters, because I've seen the Santa's one that you were talking about, because I've seen Munsters today, because I've seen Mockingbird Lane, it's like, look, it's just not going to work for me in that way. But it's not to say I completely hated it. It was just, I'll say this. I can see myself rewatching Hocus Pocus 2. Cannot see myself rewatching the Munsters. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Now, we're surfing a fine line here because you got to remember too that these movies are also made for general audiences. So let me ask you a question, because I don't have kids of my own. But for you, would your kids gravitate towards the Munsters like the Rob Zombie one if it was on TV?
I think that they would watch it, but they wouldn't be enamored with it. You know, there's the passive watching. My son is a huge when it comes to that. Like the TV's on and he's just kind of like, oh, what the fuck ever. Versus Aurora, she's like mesmerized and hypnotized at all times. But she loves Hocus Pocus. She really liked Hocus Pocus too, which I think, you know, it's definitely a lighter, more juvenile tone. But I think that's one of the, like, you know, you hear guys like Mick Garris talk about how the original was meant to be so much more severe and they had to pull it back. And it's like, but if you compare it to a lot of kids cinema, like you look at Halloween Town, for example, which was also Disney, it's also way more severe. So I think that even broadening it on, you know, in this level was a very deliberate choice to expand the audience base, which I completely understand doing. If you're going to come back to a property after over 25 years, it's kind of untested. And then you factor in all the circumstances of how it was filmed and how it's distributed. It makes sense that you would make the safest bet that you can versus like the Munsters. It's so weird to me they didn't put that on Peacock or whatever. Like they have such little faith in it that they just kind of dumped it off on Netflix to me, which is just odd, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Maybe I can starting to sound like Gavin Newsom. I got to do something about that frog in my throat. But hopefully by the end of this podcast today, I'll convince you that the Munsters isn't all that bad. And if you look at it like a public access Snickers kind of 90s TV commercial, maybe you might like it a little more. I don't know. Well, that's just me. I love the public access shit. Like I used to watch. I love shows like Sven Gulli and back in Ohio, it was called Son of Ghoul. And it was like low budget stuff like this, but very vibrant. And the camera looks like it was really cheap. I don't know. That's the one thing about it. I will say the Munsters, too fucking long. Rob Zombie's sitting waxing his carrot to every scene. Like I understand, like it's aimed for general audiences, but I want to ask you, would your kids get the Sonny and Cher like 3-minute song and dance reference?
They know that song because they've heard Sierra and I reference Groundhog Day 1,000 times. Also, check out I Got You Babe, a Groundhog Day podcast. But they wouldn't care. And that's another thing is it's like, it's so weird. Like there's these dated references and then, you know, some stuff happens. And like you said, it's like, it's too long, but then also like you feel shortchanged by the end of it. And also like the relationships don't make sense because it's like these weird vignettes because like you look at Grandpa and Herman, like that's some of the best on-screen chemistry you ever have. That's one of my favorite friendships, relationships that you ever even see in movies. And then in this one, it's like they're enemies, then frenemies, then, oh, I guess you just supplanted my entire life to a completely new nation and I'm completely cool with you. Like it just felt oddly rushed and paced, and the things that were interesting ideas weren't done enough. And then the other stuff like the oil can robot that was in like one episode, like who gives a shit?
Well, you know who played the oil can robot, right?
Who?
Eddie Munster.
Oh, that's fun. Okay, I'll give him.
And they changed his voice and everything, so it's like you wouldn't even know. It's a deeply hidden Easter egg.
Seriously, interesting.
Yeah, at first, well, see, I didn't even know that robot because I'll be honest with you, like I know of the Munsters and I've seen like episodes here and there, but I was never like. I never sat down and actually watched like full episodes. It was just I was more of like an Addams Family person.
Interesting. But you're like 2 years younger than me, right?
I am. Yeah, I'm 31. So
Oh, then you're even younger than that. I'm 35, so that Adam's Family Values right at your age group. Because I had the Munsters before I had the Raul Julia, Angelica Houston, Christopher Lloyd masterpieces. And that's something I'll say too. The Adams Family show walked so the Munsters could run. Like, it's not a great show in my opinion. The movies are great, and it's always been frustrating because I can see Universal trying over and over again to do that, and it's like, that's just not going to happen. You're that's lightning in a bottle, never meant to be duplicated.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that, and that's the thing too. Like when the trailer for the Munsters came out, everyone was shitting all over it, and rightly so. When I saw the trailer, I'm like, "Ooh, this needs to be edited a little bit." Like I saw the costumes because I mean, like I said, I knew the Munsters was the '60s sitcom and stuff, but I didn't know if it was like purposely bad costumes. Like you could even see the Uncle Gilbert's eye holes
Yeah.
when he's like sitting down in the movie theater. Or maybe it was like I didn't know. I thought he was like thinking it was Rob Zombie. It would be like a flasher creature from the Black Lagoon or something. But
And then there was weird stuff like the mummy that's mouth didn't move, and some bad ADR and stuff. It was really weird because there's moments where it looks beautiful, like when they're at the, I don't know, I think it was filmed in Poland. This the lab, which is like an abandoned power plant, that looks great. You got Grandpa's castle, looks great. Or I guess we're calling him the Count because he's not a grandpa yet. And then you just have like stuff that looks so terrible and shitty, which is just it's over bloated. That's the thing. Stick with the great sets that you have. Like, that's just it's completely unnecessary to hit 4 or 5 other places. I don't care about her going on a date with another guy at a very, very bad looking restaurant. I mean, that was set dressing. I remember doing a student film in 2007, and we had a nicer restaurant set than that. And that's a feature, or quote unquote feature film.
See, I'm the opposite on that. I love the cheapness of it. Like, I love that it looked like it was filmed in like a Spirit Halloween. Like I said, like I love the Greasy Strangler, and that's kind of what it reminded me of, like a really cheap looking set.
Yeah.
Where like if they need to extend the back of a room, they'll just green screen it, so it's like the real part, and then the rest of it's like fake. But yeah, that was I was laughing my ass off when she dates who's it, Count Orlok, the Nosferatu, and he like goes back to his cave. I mean, he's doing his weird. I think I laughed because it was so awkward.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I turned to Yahira and my brother. We were watching it, and we're just like, "What the fuck was that?" And we laughed because it was like a "what the fuck" moment.
But that's again something like, you watch it one time and it's entertaining. You watch another time, you're like, well, I already kind of know this is going to happen. I'm not really entertained by it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I like cheap. You and I both know how much we like cheap. There's a lot of the stuff on B Movie I like. I just like when cheap looks like there's effort behind it. You could make a cardboard set look cool and entertaining. This was just putting on some drapes and stuff. And so that's the thing that kind of frustrated me, is because, if they had put effort into it and it still looked cheap, like, that's cool. It's a stylistic choice. Like when they're driving through LA, that's fine. It's cheap, but it's stylized. The fact that they are just obviously in front of a green screen. Okay, cool. Like, I don't mind that. So it's that same kind of attitude. And that was a short vignette, which was a stopgap between arriving and getting there. Right. And so it wasn't completely necessary, but it did serve. Oh, Jason's joining us. Look at this beautiful boy.
Hey, we got someone at the ring that Transylvania doorbell. Who's this? Who's this? Hello? Hello?
Ding dong.
You rang. Oh, wait, wrong movie.
Lurch.
All right. Well, we got to Mr. Jason Hill resurrecting from the grave here. So he'll be in momentarily. And
Yeah,
I'm sure he's got tons of cheese, mate, because I think it'll be good to hear his witty banter back and forth here.
Let me ask you this, Doug. Did you ever read any of the Addams Family or the comics?
I never. Oh, the actual like ones from the newspaper clippings.
Yeah.
No, I know of them. Like I knew of them, but I was more of a fan of like I love the Addams Family movies, and then I loved the one that was on what was it, cartoon, the Hanna-Barbera one.
Yeah.
I used to watch that all the time. So
Can you people hear me?
I can hear you, Jason. You people.
You people.
Is this some sort of political statement?
Yes. What are you guys doing?
We are talking about the Munsters and the Hocus Pocus too, and you get to be the arbiter. Which one of us is going to convince you to watch one of these unnecessary but arguably deserved sequel/prequels?
All right. So I am currently driving to an ATM to give my drug dealer drug money. So you've got max 5 minutes, and I'm not actually doing a drug deal. I just thought it was funny.
Well, save some heroin for for the little dragon that's in Herman Munster's basement.
If you only smoke it, you can't get addicted to it, right? Isn't that how that works?
I think that's science.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
all right,
Doug,
so
make your pitch to Jason why he needs to watch it.
Okay, so I'm going to convince you why you should watch the Munsters. Have you watched the original Munsters TV series?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Not religiously like Jake. I know Jake is a huge fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I did watch it growing up, yes.
See, I've seen bits and pieces. I don't think I've ever really watched a full episode there. But when I watched the Munsters, the Rob Zombie one, it's cheap looking. It looks like a 90s candy commercial. The colors are vibrant. And I think the humor is that it's so awkward that it's funny. I love the color scheme. I love the cheapness of it. It does wax its own carrot. It is almost 2 hours long. So I will give it that. But it's a great movie if you want to have if you're having like a party or something or have people over, just throw it on in the background. People will be mesmerized by it. I think that I even thought Sherry Moon Zombie did a good job in it too. She kind of played like a schizophrenic. She kept moving her hands a lot too. So I don't know what that was about.
Okay.
I don't know if Lily Munster did that a lot.
No, that's one of the things. I understand. We had talked about this. I understand you can't recreate Fred Gwynn. That was never going to work for me. But I was very surprised at how people defended Sherry Moon online. And she has this quivering voice. And it's like, what? That's no. Like physical mannerisms as well. Like I could see kind of getting some of it wrong here or there. But Yvonne DiCarlo she did kind of like sway her hands a bit, but not like she was trying to conduct an orchestra on fire.
Yeah, I kept reminding. I even asked the I'm like, did she do it? It looks like when someone's trying to interrupt or ask someone a question while two people are conversing together, and it's like like it was always like that. Like when she's asking Herman on a date and stuff. I did like the guy who played Herman. I think he did a good job as like the nerd comedian.
Yeah. So
that I think they all did decent. Now, Grandpa or the Count. Did he always sound like an old depressed Jewish guy, or that's not how he sounded in the movie, did he? Or in the show?
Not as much. Al Lewis's presentation, he kind of had a pluckiness, and like he was really like, that's what I mean. His relationship with Herman was so fun because it was occasionally antagonistic, very often very convivial, and they had fun together. And they both had such an atypical presentation, kind of like that manic, Gomez Adams, where he's like a little bit like that. They kept it fun and breezy. But yeah, I honestly don't think that the Count was bad. I think that he was probably the best iteration of any of them. Radagast the Brown in the guy who plays Boris, that's just a bat in the show. So it's kind of a fun origin. I don't mind the change at all. Like that's actually something I'm fine with when you're adding lore like that that's just not really delved into. So that was okay. But
now, is Eddie in this movie?
Nope, no. He's not even born yet. It ends before that.
What about the cousin?
No, Marilyn is not in it.
What? So it's just the parents and the grandpa?
Yeah, so that's what I was telling Doug. Like, it seems like it feels too long and too short at the same time. Because like Doug said, it's almost 2 hours long, but then you end before any of the good stuff goes. And like maybe they thought they were going to make a sequel series out of this or something. God, I hope not. No offense, Doug. Because like that's what we were talking about before you came on, Jason, was this is a movie I could watch one time and not hate.
Okay.
It was fine. That's my opinion of the Munsters. It was fine. But if I was to ever watch it a second time, I wouldn't have the same analytical, how are they going to try and pull this off? I wouldn't have the shock and awe of the Count doing the weird dance. And those things I would lose, and I just don't think that it's there. The one thing I'll say about Hocus Pocus 2, I do think I would watch that again. In fact, I've already watched it 3 times because of my kids.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. And going into Hocus Pocus 2. So my thing with the Munsters is that I'd say give it a watch. Like, don't just pass up. I think it's an oddity.
Agreed.
I think that's how you should see that, as like a what's the word? Like not a tourist trap, but kind of like
Freak
you're
show.
driving kind of like Creep Show. A Creep Show is good. Like I can watch that over and over again.
Oh, I said Freak Show.
Oh, Freak Show. Yeah, I could kind of see. Yeah, kind of like a Freak Show, but it's like, oh, you know what? We're gonna go drive 2 hours to the biggest sock in America.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like it's a It's like, ooh, wow, the biggest sock in America. It's nice to look at, but underneath it's just a sock.
Yeah, And that's what it is. It's just a fan film. And it like the thing is, like, I think I saw on your face, you kind of looked surprised that I didn't mind like the changing of the backstory. It was okay. Like, none of this offends me. And the big thing that we've talked about on this show a lot when it comes to remakes and supplemental materials, it doesn't undercut what you loved, right? The fact is, like I said, I'll never watch this again, but I will absolutely go back and watch the original. There's a reason I've only ever sat through Munsters Today one time, because the show is bad. But I've watched the original for 33 years. I mean, it's crazy how long it's been part of my consciousness.
Yeah. Now there is one part, Jason, that I will say actually made me cringe. I turned to my brother and we just started laughing because it was so fucking stupid. I'm like, is this how the humor was in the show? The one where Grandpa makes he's trying to make a new husband for Lily.
That's a direct ripoff of the show with the Fred Astaire shoes. But yeah, keep going.
Okay, yeah, and he makes like a Elvis in a chimp outfit, and the camera's like sped up, and he like kind of tap dances. I'm like, who the fuck was this made? Like that's when I had my realization. I'm like, is this good or is this bad? But I like it because it's so fucking weird. It's like something you'd see like at 2 a.m. at public access if a community college was trying to make their own interpretation of the Munsters on like a $500 budget.
Okay. Yeah. Now, Doug, you remember those Duracell commercials from back in the day, right from the 90s, where there was a family?
Those very scary battery people? Yeah.
Yes. You're saying like an old commercial from those days. Does it remind you of the family, the Duracell family?
Yes, with the big buck teeth. That's kind of how Herman Munster looks in this here. And it's got those weird kind of camera angles, too.
Or the Promise video of when Winona's Big Brown Beaver. Remember that one with their cowboys, but they're like plastic cowboys?
I've seen big brown beavers before, but not in commercials.
No, it's a Primus music video from back in the 90s.
I'll have to YouTube it.
It's really good. So it sounds interesting. You've gotten me more excited to see the movie than I thought I would be. I will go ahead and admit I am not a Rob Zombie movie fan at all. I know Aid can hear me down in Orlando now, and she's probably about to pop on and cut my jugular.
She heard you over a hurricane, and now she is a second hurricane.
Yes, she absolutely. She's about to. Yes, it's going to be bad things to me. You'll probably never see me on the podcast again. I will disappear. But before I do that, Jake, pitch Hocus Pocus 2 to me, and we'll see if I want to watch that more or the Munsters.
I mean, so in terms of a sequel or anything, it's just another movie. It's more of the same. It doesn't completely overhaul anything. It adds a little bit of backstory. I like the fact that it's sentimental in the sense that, I mean, obviously, since Hocus Pocus came out, who gravitates to whom? Does anybody ever dress up as Thora Birch? Or how many times have you seen someone dressed up as Winifred? How many times have you seen three people, men, women, or others dressed up as these characters, or Billy for that? Like the main characters are them. And so by the end of it, they still get their comeuppance. They're not like get out of jail free, but it's almost more celebratory. And it's interesting because there's at least an argument that one of the guys who helps their resuscitation is under the conception like, oh, they were painted with a bad brush. And that's something that you see happen so often nowadays when it comes to, the reflecting on history and looking at things with a different gender study or racial study or critical race theory, whatever you want to call it. And so for him to come to their defense and then go, oh no, they are kind of deplorable, but then they kind of have a redemption. It was way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. And I laughed out loud multiple times.
Okay. I have two questions for you about Hocus Pocus 2. Is Doug Jones in this?
Yes.
And who is Hocus Pocus 2 for?
For my kids. Not for anybody
it's not
else.
So it's not for people that grew up with it. It's for their kids.
It's something that I can watch with, my 4-year-old, and nothing was very severe. I mean, there was a part where the girls are like kind of separated for a second when the witches, when they're girls, and that's as severe as it gets. Everything else is very fun. Versus, the first time I watched Hocus Pocus was with my kiddo, I was like, I have to keep an eye on some of the, the language and stuff, which wasn't bad at all. But it's definitely meant for a legacy. I mean, this is like, how our parents took us to see the Star Wars special edition in the 90s. It's the same thing. Like, this is meant for me to go, oh, I'm very nostalgic about this. Let me introduce it to you. My daughter goes, oh, okay, get it now.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of the Dumb and Dumber sequel that came out, where it's like, oh, here's the characters again. It's like, oh, it felt almost like Ghostbusters 2, where they kind of followed the same outline. Oh, they end up at a festival. They're going to sing again. Oh, they got tricked by water. Oh, they got, you know what I mean? It follows kind of the same beats.
All right. So is it, Does it stand on its own, or is it really just nostalgia exploitation?
Not as much nostalgia exploitation as I thought, but definitely, amuck, 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 and little things like that. But it wasn't like you were hinging plot points on it. So it was
Okay.
like homage, but not a too deep of a deviation. Like my kids didn't get distracted by it at all.
Yeah,
Okay.
it also felt like a Super Bowl commercial ad
Yeah.
with Walgreens. Holy fuck, how much did Walgreens pay for this movie?
I have heard the Walgreens complaint for this movie. I have
Oh,
heard
yeah.
that, yes.
Oh, there's
And
like a
I
10-minute scene with Walgreens.
Yeah, and I even
And then
talked to a coworker whose wife is apparently a huge fan of the OG, and so she said that she had seen it 2 or 3 times already over the weekend. I remember I recommended, because there is a sequel novel for people that might not know that. There was
Correct.
they released it a couple years ago. I don't know if it's any good or not, but I recommended that to him. So I was like, hey, tell her you got this for a present. Don't even say I recommended it for you. Be the super husband that you are.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and say, now, Doug, you really did pitch it to me really well. I just gotta say, you had a huge mountain to climb, because I just do not like Rob Zombie movies. I like Rob Zombie. I just do not like Rob Zombie movies. But you absolutely did tickle my fancy with the Munsters.
Well, here's what I'll
But
say. Like Rob Zombie's kind of like if you're gonna go to Longhorn Steakhouse, you already know there's gonna be peanuts all over the fucking floor. You already know
Sure.
what you're getting into, but it's like,
oh
what?
yeah, absolutely.
I'm craving Longhorn Steakhouse, and that's kind of how it's like. You know what? I'm craving a Rob Zombie movie. I'm gonna go see it. This one is almost like Rob Zombie on the kids menu. Like you see every one thing having fun in the back. You get some of the other references, but I don't know. I just feel like it's Rob Zombie, and they give him like a very vibrant neon paintbrush to make this movie with, and he made it the cheapest way possible, but somehow I even like I think it was Cousin Wolfie, the asshole werewolf guy that sells their house.
Her brother, who's in, I believe, one episode of the original show. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a deep
so,
cut. What a deep cut.
So he's like the villain, and then Cassandra Peterson is in this too. So you do get some Elvira.
I did see that. Now, is she Cassandra Peterson or she Elvira?
She's Cassandra. She's an
Cassandra.
old gypsy woman.
Well, that makes sense. Well, it's like I said, you have made me more anticipatory for this movie than I thought I would be. But it's just a steep mountain to climb, and I think I'm going to watch Hocus Pocus 2 instead. You can blame it on Jake's litigation skills. I will not.
Like you said, the deck was stacked severely in my favor, and I do think
really
that Doug really highlighted the best parts of it. I almost kicked the can and just was almost dismissive about it, because it just, especially if you grew up, and that was one of the comparisons we made to like the Raul Julia Addams Family. This is not a reinvention like that. This is really fan film territory.
Okay, so what are you looking forward to more? Are you looking forward to the Addams Family remake at all, or Wednesday, I guess?
I'm curious. I'm not overly optimistic. If I'm honest, I was never the hugest fan. I mean, I did watch the old black and white show on occasion. I'm actually a bigger fan of the comic strip than I am of the show, but then I'm a bigger fan of the movies than I am of the comic strip. So it's almost
I remember I watched the cartoon growing up a lot in the 90s.
Yeah, that one, it paired up with Beetlejuice very nicely, which I liked as well. In fact, like they're so similar in style. I'd probably even rank that second to the movies now I think about it.
I also know that you are a big fan of the movie Iced, which has the original Wednesday Addams in it.
Yes, it does.
In an weird to see sex.
Yeah. And then, so what about you, Jason? Are you into Wednesday, or are you into maybe Thursday or Friday?
Kind of. If it wasn't for Tim Burton, now granted he hasn't done anything interesting. He's just been on that Disney teat since, I don't know, the 20s. But I'm somewhat anticipation. I don't know. It's Netflix, so they'll push it down my throat, and then when I finally watch it, they'll announce that they're canceling it right after
just
I finally break down and watch it. And it's just like, I'm really this close to canceling my Netflix subscription. It's like the most expensive, and everything on there sucks, except for the good stuff that they immediately cancel.
I canceled mine, and then I got it free with my phone plan, and I was like, I can't escape this shit.
Well, here's what I'll say. And this is, I think, why I liked the Munsters. I liked Hocus Pocus 2, don't get me wrong. I did feel Hocus Pocus 2 is a little bit too commercial and too like sanitary in some spots.
Yeah.
But we're talking about Wednesday. So that's a fucking show, like an hour long episode per each. Munsters is 2 hours. You know what I mean? So what if Wednesday ends up turning bad, what did more damage on you, on your time in your life? Wednesday where
is
it's like
true.
8 hours, or Munsters where it's an hour and 48 minutes.
Well, that's one of the
that is
things
very
with
true.
Netflix too, is it's like I'm generally a guy who waits until a show is entirely over before I invest in it. Like I laugh my ass off at all of you Game of Thrones people who were so upset, or you Lost people who were so upset, or you How I Met Your Mother people who were so upset by the ending. And so that's one of the things with Netflix is if I don't watch it, it gets canceled. And so even if it is good, it prematurely ends. So it's this vicious cycle where if they were like, okay, we're committed to 2 seasons, okay, then
Yep.
that's fine. And also, I know that it's not likely to end on a huge cliffhanger because it's not facilitating the second season based on that kind of enticement. I just make it good on its own merits. That's one of the things that I would just love if things could be more self-contained. And that's another reason why I like the finality of Hocus Pocus 2, whereas the Munsters felt like, okay, and now we're finally getting to the stuff that you care about.
Now, Jason, do you care about spoilers? Or are we doing spoilers on this episode, Jake?
I should probably get off now. I hope I didn't derail y'all's podcast too much. It was a fun exercise. It was a fun exercise, even though it was stacked very much against you. It was like Jake showed up to court knowing the judge was going to throw it out.
You know what? I think I would be the worst judge because I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Watch them both.
And that's, I think, the thing I would agree with. I think that it's good. And I also think it's a good contrast between the two. Right.
Sure.
And I'll say that neither of these are anywhere near as bad as the Addams Family animated movies that came out in the last few years. I hate those. My kids love them. I hate them.
That sucks too.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks. Well, all right. I'll let you guys get into the spoilerific parts of the show, and I will. I guess I'm sure I'll probably send you guys a text message at some point, or I'll wake up to 30 text messages like the group chat's been going here recently.
Yeah, exactly. We need more people on the West Coast to kind of even that out, I think.
Yeah, and someone has a fucking iPhone because I see it's like, oh, you got a new message, and it's just a heart for the iPhone people. Like,
it's me.
The fuck?
I have an iPhone. It's just, I think I'm the only person.
You're a nerd.
So you're the heart giver.
You're the reason I can't send video messages.
Oh, that's right. That's why they always go through Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But all right,
well,
guys.
Good goddamn riddance.
Later.
All right, Mr. Yasun, take care.
I removed him. Oh, it says I have to report him. Don't report him. No, I don't want to do that. Don't want to get his account suspended.
Well, he does have an iPhone giving hearts and making us get the text messages because we're all Samsung people. So
yeah, that's the way it should be. I want to give my money to a country that's bordering the country that's blowing up Japan.
Yeah, see, and you get a cool little pen to wave. It's like, don't nuke me. At least you have a pen to wave. So
you know how
yeah.
stylish. Do you know how stylish a stylus is?
I know it's pretty stylish to get a stylus. You have a stylus on yours, right?
I do. I love it. I use it all the time. That's how I did the keyframe animation for your fucking movie.
Oh yeah. Speaking of cheap, low budget effects, but Jake did a really good job. So I don't know when this episode's coming out, but Trash Juice is October 12th, and you can see Jake's amazing face effects. You know, this you get face spinnings and it jumping off the screen and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
The wonders you got to do when actors bail on you and say, I can't do your movie because I got to do a fucking my agent doesn't want me to do it because he wants me to do Hallmark Christmas movies. So
well, I gotta commend you on the way that you handle that. Very artful, very tasteful. It's almost a seamless transition. You'd never know that guy abruptly got written out of the movie 10 minutes in.
Well, yeah, you never know, but that's okay. See, if Rub Zombie was doing it, Rub Zombie. Oh, great! Now I'm gonna call him Rub Zombie.
I actually really like that name,
Rub Zombie. That would have been good for the Munsters here. So,
yeah, actually, I don't know if you know this, but I have a new name. It's Bingo Banano, because I was using AI image generators to do a picture of like the banana splits bingo, and it came up, and like, you know how usually the text for AI is terrible, this one actually was legible, and so I've been going by Bingo Banano. That's my my stage name.
Yeah, so for all you people out there, so when Jake's on stage doing drag, Bingo Bango, or Bingo, what was it again?
Banano, Binano.
Yeah, you just got to tuck the banana between your legs and you're good to go. But Jake is like obsessed with these AI generators online. And yeah, he's made a bunch of weird things, like weird things, like when I was some sort of lizard king or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I've done quite a few. I even found a way to make pornography with it, which is interesting.
Really? What was like Bang Bus, or I can only imagine Bang Bus in the cars. There's cars fucking.
Well, there's a few different ones that allow you, because the most popular ones like Doll-E and you know, there's a few other ones, Mid-Journey and stuff. They have very strictly coded like parameters. Like for instance, I tried to take a picture of Jim Turn where it's him with a sword. I tried to upload it and it recognized there was a sword in the picture and said, no, it goes against our terms of use. It's a violent image. So they're very strict in that regard. And then there's some that just aren't. And so that's how they're marketing themselves, is like, hey, you can make a vagina. The reason that I'm so fascinated by it is because of like the neural network of content. And also the legal ramifications that come out of it, right? Like if, let's say you and me, we're making a Dolly Mini and we're going to make an AI image generator, and I put in Rob Zombie Munsters style werewolf. Should Rob Zombie get money for that? Because it used a data set involving his, and while the neural network made a new bit of content, a new series of ones and zeros, it is derived inarguably from copyrighted work.
Oh, my PBS brain and cerebellum are exploding.
That's why I'm so fascinated by it. And it's also to push to see, like, because it's another great way of testing what is readily accessible, what, like, using search terminology to show a data set. Because, like, for instance, if I were to put in Slash's podcast, you got a few thousand images floating around the internet. If I was to use the Joe Rogan podcast, you have 9 million hours of streaming video where you could pull from. And so it's interesting to see what kind of content can generate a more realistic likeness and things like that as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jake even plugged in a trash juice thing to make like a poster and look like the Russian kind of Papua New Guinea poster for trash juice. So
yeah,
hey, there
like
you
go. The Asylum Films presents The Juice of the Dumpster.
Yeah. See, you got to make it in Spanish though. Jugo de basura. So
ooh, that sounds good. You should be a pro wrestler with that name.
Jugo de basura, coming in to clean la culo.
You could be like the Great Muda and spit green mist in people's faces.
Well, hey, Micah, if you got any more wrestling suits, I could be the Jugo de basura man. So, but there is already a fucking trash man. That was Danny
Duke the
DeVito.
Dumpster.
Yeah. So, oh man, but yeah. So after Jason fucking derailed us, after I hope it ate your credit card, Jason, at the ATM or whatever you did.
Yeah, and I hope that they doused your heroin with something a little bit more stiff.
Yeah, well, I mean, Russia's in big trouble right now, so they can't fill it with crocodile.
Oh man, that shit's so gnarly. Flaking skin off like it's nothing.
Yeah, see, you pull it off and save it for later, just like Chop Top. But yeah, so speaking of peeling off skin and eating it like Chop Top, yeah, so Hocus Pocus 2. So honestly, when you saw this one, what were you thinking before you even watched it? Was this another one like the Munsters where it's like, I'm curious to see what they did?
Yeah, like it was all just seeing how they were going to do it and how they were going to effectuate the balance of, fan service, right? Because that's the era that we live in. I mean, and the fact is I guess you could call it like a soft reboot, but at the same point, like it was derivative, but it also had a smaller pool to pull from. So that's one of the things that's interesting as well. Like the Munsters was loaded with tons of references and homage, which I do appreciate. Yeah, I get it. Al Lewis puts the shoes in, Herman's gonna learn to dance, doesn't take the potion, blah blah blah. And so having that in this, like, it's cool, but that's a little too niche, I guess. Even my kid was able to get the references, like the amok that Sarah Jessica Parker does. So it was, honestly, that was maybe a thing that determined it as well. I got to enjoy it through the lens of my children, right? Versus the Munsters I watched alone, but also the Munsters I watched alone as a kid. No one that I knew watched. It was a fucking 30-year-old show by the time I was a kid. So I didn't have any friends who watched it. My parents didn't watch it. The only time I was watching it was when they were doing something else or they were at work and I was homesick or whatever. So it was a very solitary experience. Maybe that had something to do with it as well. It sounds like you watched both with people, right?
I did, yeah. Or Munster, like I said, Munsters was one of the things. If I recall, it was on Nick at Night, right? Like after Roseanne and stuff. Or I don't remember, but I just remember it would come. Like I'd watch cartoons sometimes, and then the Munsters would come on and be like, "Eh."
I don't know if it's TV Land, but yeah, something like that.
TV Land,
yeah. It was the night, but it also aired during the day as well, and that was where I saw it more often.
Oh, okay, but yeah, see, and that's the thing too. Like I love the original Hocus Pocus. I actually legitimately like that. Like when I was younger. It was always Short Circuit, Critters, Child's Play and Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Mick
Hocus
Garris
Pocus
wrote Critters 2 and Hocus
he
Pocus.
did.
Yeah.
I think that's why I gravitated. And even recently, like I rewatched the first Hocus Pocus again, and I'm like, it still holds up. The effects
Very well.
on Binks the cat look really good even to this day, and it's the jokes are funny. I think Winifred, like her facial reactions are like the funniest things ever.
Oh,
Still,
so good.
so
Like you could do a whole like collection of gifs using just her face that work. With the original too, it's kind of interesting because a lot of that fashion is trendy again. And so to see when I rewatched it most recently, I was like, oh my God, like I just saw a hipster walking around like that just today. And so it's interesting how that generational recycling kind of goes on.
it does, yeah. And the thing is too, like even though it's Disney, I don't know, something with me when I was a kid, I don't remember it being. I mean, Disney's fanned their nuts over it now. It's all over the place, like Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff. They realize they've hit that market and they're going to tap it. But when I was a kid, like I honestly forgot it was Disney. I thought it was like a Universal movie or something.
Well, it was distributed through the Buena Vista imprint, so it wasn't hugely. And also, I mean, it got buried. Like they went out the same week as Jurassic Park. Like, are you retarded? You're putting out a Halloween movie July.
Yeah, July, and then it didn't come out. I remember it didn't come out until it was released in '93 and didn't come out on VHS till '95. Is that what I
don't
read?
know if it's that far, but I do know it completely skipped the Halloween season, so it didn't like catch up and go, oh, okay, now you get your home movie release in time for Halloween, as far as I remember, because it's a movie that I ended up buying.
Yeah, no, I remember watching it over and over and over again, and I liked those characters. But I will say with Hocus Pocus 2, like besides it being like, of course now it's super popular, so every advertisement they can have is going to be in it. Like I said, the whole Walgreens thing, it feels like a Super Bowl commercial at sometimes because it's so sanitary and clean.
Like when you saw the DeLorean on the Walmart commercial and stuff, I completely understand that. You get no argument from me there. The fact is, like, narratively, it actually kind of worked, the whole like beautification thing and the souls and the cream. Like I thought that was a clever way of doing it, but it was transparent what they were doing.
Yeah, I did laugh at the part when she had the face mask. She's like, look, it's the face of a baby.
Yes,
so fresh.
I loved that. And like the Roombas, for example, like luckily it wasn't like Roomba branded Roombas. It was just the idea of like a smart sweeper or whatever. And so there was stuff that was like, it was hokey and it was corny, but it was to an extent where it was like in on the joke. Whereas I feel like you had said, I almost wish that there was a character like Marilyn or Eddie in the Munsters to watch and go, nah, this isn't cool. Oh, that's not a good reference. Oh, that's a 50-year-old reference. We don't need to do that. Because I think that would have worked, because with the Sandersons, you had that, contemporary foil to go, oh no, this is an automated door, like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's, I didn't even think about that. So that is what feels like it's missing. But I think that's what makes the Munsters unique on its own, because you don't have any of those 21st century characters saying that, oh, this is, giving you like kind of composition of how it's going to be. It's like, oh wait, that's not how this works. You know what I mean? Like everyone's just their own, like it's such a bizarre world. Not only because they're monsters, but just because they're I don't even know, like there's no rules to it. Everything goes and nothing's questioned by any of the characters.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. The person who's the most prejudiced is Herman Munster, the guy who actually has one of the most poignant diatribes ever about accepting people and the caliber of your character on the show. It was very interesting, especially to have it like set in like a Tim Burton-esque, very anachronistic, like Edward Scissorhands in a lot of ways, where Edward Scissorhands feels like it's set in the 80s, and then you look at the pastel little pillbox houses like Joan Baez is talking about, and it's got this quaintness and this retro aesthetic, almost like what you're breaking apart from with the new youth. And so that anachronism, I could see how it could have worked. I just don't feel like it did. What did you think of the doctor's assistant from the Munsters who comes up with the name Herman Munster?
That was the guy from Lost, right? Is that who it was? Yeah. He was funny. He was just playing an Igor character. I didn't think there was anything really special with him. I don't know what, like I liked Richard Brake's Vincent Price like impersonation.
He was great.
Yeah, he was good. I don't think anything really special of the Igor character. He named him Herman Munster, but it's like, where'd you get the name from? Because he was in a band, right? Like they were trying to get him to be the lead singer of a punk band.
They end up doing that, yeah,
Yeah.
but it wasn't his attention originally. And it's, Munster, like the cheese. It
Oh,
just
like the
felt
cheese,
so
yeah.
like weird. And that was one of the things too, is it's like that wasn't a long scene. It was a couple of minutes. But that could have been dedicated to something I think a little bit more of substance. And it also felt so obtuse. It didn't feel like it was a riff or anything, right? It wasn't like improv where they, kind of found the beat or found the joke. It felt like that was written, and it was written kind of at an antiquated time, and it just felt very rigid, right?
Yeah, it does. It at times this almost felt like a Tim and Eric style humor thing, but unintentionally Tim and Eric. Like Tim and Eric know
Agreed.
there's going to be awkward pauses and just like, why the fuck is that funny?
And
But
that's why they excel in that, is because it's like the anti-humor. And I feel like this didn't nail that. And I honestly question if it was deliberate to be that anti-humor at points.
yeah, I'm admitting, like, I know the Munster. I'm not saying the Munsters is the greatest thing ever. I'm just
No,
saying
of course not.
it's an oddity and unique, and but there are things like that. Like I said, that whole the chimp in the monkey suit. I'm like, this is so fucking stupid. There was another scene too. I think the whole, like, when before they build Herman Munster, they go to like the zombie area and they're like, "Don't you eat brains?" He's like, "Yes, I ate." Like, there's like a brain joke of him eating brains, and it goes on for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like just odd. And also, why are his hands, the pianist hands, he's already a zombie, so he's already been reanimated and now he's being reanimated again, but then the hands don't look like the zombie hands, which you see when the guy poses with the hands.
Oh, see, I don't think I was paying that close of attention.
It was just little stuff like that where it was like, there are times where Rob Zombie writes what I think is truly the horror equivalent of a Quentin Tarantino dialogue. I didn't have any of that here, unless it came from the Count, and even then was like, hey.
Well, I did laugh. Like, I was actually like not busting a nut, but busting out laughing when the Count is like showing Lily the pictures of his rat kids.
Yeah.
and then but it's just like a real quick gag. See, that's the humor that I wish there was more of, like real quick gags.
Yes.
That are like there for a second when it shows the newspaper clipping. It's like Count Orlok killed by rats. So
it's great.
Yeah.
That easy breezy quick, you're out. And also it gets a little bit more dynamic. Like the oil can guy is like, okay, that doesn't like warm the cockles of my heart. I guess if I knew that it was Eddie, that's kind of cool. There's nothing necessarily funny about it. Like, he kind of breaks down at a point, which is like, okay. So you almost wish that they would have got like the greatest hits. I think if you cut like 10 minutes out of this movie, maybe even 20 minutes out of this movie, you can have a much more pithy kind of quick, get me going, and I would end on a higher note. But the fact is it felt like it stayed out its welcome, and then right when it gets to the interesting part, it's gone. And it's like, well, I'm exhausted, so I don't actually want any more, but I do want more. It's like eating shitty food. Were you ever had shitty food where like the last bite is like, or a bag of chips? You're eating chips. There's no flavor. There's no salt on anything. The last one perfectly salted. And you're like, well, I'm already full and bloated, and I have a guilty conscience because I wasted all these calories on this. God damn it.
And you spent so much money on half of it air.
Yes. Oh, that's what this movie is too. It's a big bag of air. But
Yeah,
it does look good. I will say, like, I really like the colors that you were talking about earlier.
I do like the color. Like I said, it feels like a college haunted house production value. Like, that's really what I can't really explain it. And there's no other movie really like that I can think of at this caliber, or, because Rob Zombie's pretty much a household name now. So I just can't think of any other filmmaker making a movie that looks so cheap, even though they have like a big budget towards their name and stuff. But what I will say, what did piss me off, I know, like you said, when the movie was over, it's like, I want more. What the fuck was with that ending? Like, I know I'm not a good writer or a good movie person or anything, but that's like this. Like I said, we're gonna go into spoiler territory, but it's just like, I feel like some producers like, Mr. Zombie, we got to wrap this up now. It's like, but we still have 20 more minutes to film. No, just make an ending right now. We'll film it, and it'll be it, Mr. Zombie.
Well, like, literally, I watched behind the scenes stuff of them wearing masks as they were filming. It's almost like, oh, the pandemic happened, we can't film anymore after today, and they're just like, okay, money, I guess. It was honestly as abrupt as the Holy Grail in a lot of ways, but also just not interesting, or it was very weird. Like, we're in the money, we're dancing, we're done. Boom.
Yeah, even Yahira and my brother, like I said, we were watching it together, and they both said, "That's it. That's how it ends."
Yeah. But
So
then you compare that to the ending of Hocus Pocus, and you're like, okay, this is sentimental. They get their shine. The good guys win. It's about unity and friendship, and I really liked like female empowerment. It's the women who like pull it off, and I thought that was cool. It left me like on a much higher note, which makes me more willing to do it again.
yeah, with Hocus Pocus 2, I mean, we could spoil that ending too, right? You might as well.
Yeah,
People
fuck
already
yeah.
listening. Yeah, so with Hocus Pocus 2, it's funny because going back to the first movie, they were the villains the whole time.
Whole time,
Like,
irredeemably terrible, trying to murder children, trying to lure children away. And that was one of the funny things as well, when she's like, oh, no luring of children, got it.
she's like, that was my only job that I did so good. Yeah, so with the ending of the second one, I feel like Disney tries to do that now. Like they're doing it with Star Wars, they're doing it like Cruella, they even try to make her fucking
Cruella, yep.
sympathetic. I'm like,
Maleficent, all those.
Maleficent, leave them be. They're villains. That's why we like them so much.
Eventually, we're gonna get Hades from Hercules, but it's gonna be like a misunderstood alt-right guy, and then we're gonna try and feel sorry for him.
Stop doing that. We gotta like just let bad guys be bad guys. I love when bad guys are just evil with no explanation.
Loki, another good one, where it's just a guy who's villainous becoming so sentimental, and you're like, oh, okay, I love him.
Yeah, well, see this one here, but okay. So here's the thing: Yahira started tearing up at the end of it. I'm like, okay, I could kind of see why that. But the thing is, like at the end of Hocus Pocus 2, at basically the whole thing is these girls resurrect. They don't resurrect. They have Gilbert, the doofus, who is like, I'm such a big fan. Yeah, well, they're evil, but anyway, like they get the whole thing. And finally she wants to do the curse that is all makes her all powerful. So Winifred would be the best witch, and she could use all of her magic. And she doesn't read like the like what it is that
the disclaimer.
The disclaimer, yeah.
The terms and conditions.
Yeah, see, very legal reasons here. So even the witches fall fall victim to that. But yeah, so she finally gets the book and she claims her ultimate power, but you have to lose the things that are closest to you. So her her sisters end up getting disintegrated, kind of Thanos snapped out of existence. And she's like, wait a minute, what? What's the use of being all powerful and evil if I don't have my sisters? Like I'm nothing without them. It's boring. And so she ends up like using the other girls to help me walk through this here, but it's like she was trying to use them because they were like a young coven of witches, like new generation witches. Yeah.
So the new girl has used magic sporadically throughout, and that she uses them, and they do a reversal spell. But it doesn't bring the sisters back. It just means that Winifred is now able to go with her sisters, which is like a nice reversal. They're having consequences. They murdered children. They deserved objectively to have consequences, right? But they do it in a way that is emotionally fulfilling, and it's kind of beautiful. And it's also like if you were watching a Three Stooges movie and you have Mo beating the shit out of these, Larry and Curly or whichever schmeppo, and by the end of it, and he realizes the error of his ways. That's a great, simple, without betraying the character arc that you could fit in a short amount of time, right?
Yeah, well, they did do that in the Three Stooges movie that came out a few years ago
With Will Sasso, yeah. But
yeah,
I mean, that's what I mean. It's like it's endearing and it works because we're sentimental for the characters. We're assuming the best of the characters. That's a great way of that person loving the characters that we love, and it was nice. And the thing was, it wasn't offensive. It didn't take up too much of my time. It didn't the beats were quick enough to where I felt like it was going at all times. And it's got Buster from Arrested Development. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like that ending that's in part 2 is you wouldn't see that in the first one at all. You know what I mean? Like, because they were really mean in the first one.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting elements of it as well, because of the sentimentality of it being a 25-year sequel, like, or even longer than that. Like if you had done this sequel 2 years later, yeah, I don't think it would have worked very well. I don't think that people would have been ready for it, because like the idea of her changing wouldn't have made sense. But then here it's like, I think that and it worked even for my kid, where she liked it a lot, and she's only been exposed to them both recently, but I think that she could kind of understand the depth of their character and like the way that they were changing things, and small little variances, which were kind of cool. And like I liked good things where she's like, that was my one job. Like luring children was the one thing that I did. It reminded me so much of Sigourney Weaver from Galaxy Quest, where she's repeating the computer and she's like, I have one job. because it's like it's also turning it on its head. It's like saying like, yeah, this character who was already vapid, it was the joke, and you can kind of look back on it a little more fondly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. But yeah, so like I said, like I have big nostalgia for the first Hocus Pocus, but then at the end of the day, you got to think like I could say, oh, it watered down, but then again, it's not made for us. It's also made for the new generation of kids watching Disney Plus. Like they don't even know what a fucking VHS is, so they're gonna, quick to access. Like honestly, Hocus Pocus 2, and the Munsters, I think. Hocus Pocus, I'll admit on the podcast, Hocus Pocus 2 is a better movie than the Munsters, better developed, whereas the Munsters is just such a weird oddball experience that you kind of have to, even if you experience it once, just watch it for it feels very much like Halloween time. Like if I want something to get me in the Halloween mood, I'll throw on Hocus Pocus 2 and the Munsters.
Well, it's a hideous car wreck. You look, you see it, you're not going to drive by the same car wreck twice. I think Hocus Pocus is great because it shouldn't work, and it does very well. The fact that this is even passable is pretty remarkable when you think about all the circumstances. But even taking all the, because you've heard me talk about that quite a bit in our friendship, where it's like, oh yeah, and if you factor in the circumstances of the movie, it's even better. Right, like if you factor in, oh, it was filmed under like the Justice League. Oh, if you factor in the fact that it was whole fucking re-edited and done at the 11th hour, it's a pretty good movie. Even if I take out that kind of analysis and take away the handicap, I still think that it's a fairly good movie. That's faithful to the source material. It doesn't feel like it was written by people who hadn't seen the original, and the performances, they get the benefit of it being the original people. Like they might not be as good as they used to be, but they're also fucking 30 years older, versus like there's no way I can look at Sherry Moon and think, oh, she's as good as Yvonne DiCarlo, and that's not her fault. That was never going to work for me. That's like making a gingerbread house out of dicks and trying to sell it to me as a dessert. It's not going to work. I could look at it and be amused at it, but I'm going to generate a new AI image immediately after.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, they're not shoving it down your throats and stuff. They're not, you know what I mean? But they're both harmless, fun. More so Hocus Pocus 2, but then again, put yourself in the mind of a kid. Like if we were kids watching this, would you be sitting? Well, the production values and how was the production when it was made? What were the COVID protocols? What was the backstory? What was the originals like? No, if I was how old was I when I watched Hocus Pocus? That was 1993. So I was like maybe 5 years old. I was 3 in 93, but yeah, I was probably around 5 or 6 when I watched Hocus Pocus. And, I'm just in there for the ride. I'm watching it. So
you're letting it consume you, wash over you, crash into you like a Dave Matthews Band. Now, Doug, I think we've, the moral of the story, watch it all. If I wanted to watch more of you specifically, how would I do that?
Well, you could also see more of Jake too on the channel because it is October, and on B Movie TV on Roku, it's a free channel. Download it. We got a bunch of great stuff on there. Jake's on occasionally for Saturday Night Terrors, Saturdays at 10 p.m. I'm on Fridays for Friday Night Slashing at 8 p.m. because we're on the October schedule here. So everything is modified to be Halloweeny and horror movie related. So we got a bunch of really rare stuff that we're showing. This month is also the month of October 12th. So Like Father, Like Daughter and Trash Juice will be playing at the Terra Cinemas in San Pedro. 2 films we've been working on very hard. Jake tirelessly cramped up. In fact, you know what I imagine? Jake did so much work for the head modification in Trash Juice that I felt like there's an episode of Ren and Stimpy where Ren's like this dictator saying, you need to do this. And Ren's like has 7 bags under his eyes and he has like a pail of crust and he's like shaking, trying to finish the artwork. That's kind of how I felt. So I apologize, Jake, if it was anything like that in real life.
It was, but I enjoyed the process. And that's one of the things too, is it's like, if you say you're going to do it, you do it. And I never wanted you were already so incredibly inconvenienced by that situation. The least I could do was help out. Cause like I've had those creative endeavors. I've done the pre-sale tickets for a band, and then you find out that 3 of your band members didn't sell a single ticket, and like that panic-stricken, like how, like, this is a creative endeavor and I'm passionate about it and I want to do it, and it's just another hurdle. and that's taking away the creative influence. So whatever I could do to help, I'm really happy I was able to. So it's no chore at all.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so Jake's done so much stuff for the helping of finishing Trash Juice. Same with Mikey, same with Aid. Micah and Greg are in the movie. Jason's in the movie. So everyone from the podcast is in the movie, and they participated and helped out in one way or the other. You know, I've had an actor bail out right when we filmed everything. Then we've had a drunk alcoholic. He's not listening to this. Editor that's been arrested twice and wasn't able to finish the project. That I had to land everything on me. So I had to, with the little time I had to basically stay up 2 weeks without sleep to finish this thing. So it's been a very collaborative project. I'm excited for everyone to see it and, you know, fan their nuts in the movie theaters and all that. But yeah, so I'm going off my keister again here. I tend to ramble a lot here, but yeah, so you know, we got Damn That's Scary as well too. Greg and Micah are doing some good shows too. Everyone's in the Halloween spirit, and this is the time I love. Pumpkin Spice podcasts, movies. This is the best time of the year.
And Frightmares. Don't forget Frightmares.
Oh, Frightmares podcast. Yes, with Austin Proctor. So
hell yeah. So enjoy all of the content. We're trying to do daily reviews coming out and everything. So please stay tuned, and goodbye and good
die.
bingo.